So I make no secret of the fact that I love Pokemon games. They were my first venture into the world of RPGs back in the 90s, and to this day stand up as some of the most replayable games in the genre due to their impressive roster of over 800 characters to choose from. Enough to make even Suikoden look small time. But still, there's no denying that the games are growing stagnant, and becoming increasingly difficult for long-time fans to get excited about as they dig further and further down the rabbit hole of casualization. God, I hate using that word, but at this point there's no better term. As cool as the Let's Go games look, and excited as I am for them, it's becoming increasingly more evident that they're going to be completely devoid of any sort of even remote challenge. So here's my little list of ways that I personally think that Game Freak could improve their series. As ever, it's just my opinions and they're probably not worth much, but hey, a man can dream, right?
Pikachu!
So, as I just said, the games are getting too easy. Don't get me wrong, Pokemon games have never been difficult per se, but I don't think at least needing to pay attention to what's going on screen and having a basic idea of type mechanics is really too much to ask. I feel like Game Freak or the Pokemon Company or whoever are massively underestimating their fans. As a kid of 8, I was able to complete Pokemon Blue with no problems, and I don't think you need to dumb down the game for kids of this generation. But that's not to say an easier game mode shouldn't exist for people who want it. Why not include an easy mode, a hard mode, and since it's becoming something of a cultural phenomenon at this point, a Nuzlocke mode. Of course the latter would need to be renamed, but you get my drift. Give players more options on how they want to play the game, and that way you'll make everyone happy.
Charmander!
So while I'm talking, there's going to be a little slideshow featuring every quote-unquote legendary Pokemon in the game right now. It's a lot. At this point, legendaries have no weight behind them, they're just another par for the course, another overpowered, over-designed mess, which was, more often than not, thrown in as some sort of promotional tool or giveaway. I never use the bloody things in my team anyway, and at this point they're just swamping the roster. So from now on I'd like to see a return to a more sensible quantity of legendaries each generation. If I had my way I'd get rid of them altogether, but I know that they're a staple part of the series and some players would be disappointed to see them go, so I say no more than 6. 2 box art plot centric legendaries, 1 mythic supreme legendary which is acquired in-game, probably during the post-game, and then no more than 3 others which are found in optional side areas or through side quests which the player has to go out of their way to discover. The Ultra Beast shit was ridiculous. Scale it back.
Squirtle, Squirtle!
One of the reasons I rate Gen 1 so highly, aside from nostalgia obviously, is the freedom it granted. The same can be said for Gens 2 and 3 to a degree, but since then the games have been a simple, linear slog with no optional content, nothing worth exploring, nothing worth coming back to. Sun and Moon were the worst examples of this. The world was set up as a relatively open environment, but every time you reached a new town or route, every exit bar one will be blocked off by some arbitrary bullshit so that you could be railroaded into the next boring ass cutscene. And that's not to say I don't want story in my game, but there's better ways to tell it than have your gameplay interrupted every 5 fucking seconds by some obnoxious kid doing 5 solid minutes of over-explained exposition. I'd much rather explore on my own, thanks all the same. Maybe it'll take me longer to find the Sylph Scope if there isn't an NPC to drag me to Giovanni's hideout, but I'll feel so much more accomplished when I solve the problem on my own. So this pretty much ties into my last point, but god damn, can we please have a world to explore instead of a series of locations which feel like they were set up especially for the arrival of my character? Remember Seafoam Islands? Remember the power plant? Remember the 7 whole fucking islands of post-game content in Fire Red and Leaf Green? What happened to the development team who created all of these little bonus chunks of content, put in place only for those who have a sense of adventure and a willingness to explore? Just because a location exists in the game doesn't mean we have to go there at some point for some increasingly pointless reason. I get that as consoles become more powerful and graphic standards increase, there is less time in a development cycle for creating optional content, but I kind of feel like Pokemon of all franchises should be making enough money to hire a bigger development team in order to deliver fans a more complete experience. Hell, at this point I'd rather have a new game with no new Pokemon at all, if that means more time can be dedicated to a larger, more interesting world.
Wee wee!
So one of the coolest things about the Let's Go games for me is the option to play cooperatively. Online battles are great and all, but more multiplayer focus would bring this series to a whole new level regarding replayability and widen the net of the fanbase. So yeah, keep that up I guess. What I'd like to see though is opposing trainers use 2 Pokemon when you play co-op in order to maintain some level of challenge, because let's face it, in a lot of 2v1 battles the second player won't even get to make an attack.
Mr. Mime!
Finally, I'd like to see one of 2 things. Either stat reworks to make a lot of the weaker Pokemon more viable, or extra evolutions, pre-evolutions, or mega evolutions for Pokemon that need them. Just some names off the top of my head which are desperate for this sort of treatment are like Corsola, Arbok, Dunsparce, Octillery, Sunflora, Lovedisk, Stunfisk, Tropius, but there's literally hundreds of the buggers who are borderline unusable at this point. And rather than address this, Game Freak would rather just keep on churning out more new mons. Get your house in order first and then expand. And that's about it. I don't think any of these ideas are big asks really, just small tweaks to the formula which could inject some much needed fun into the games, and make the experience into more of an adventure and less of just going through the motions. I'm sure no one from the development team will see this video, but hey, maybe they'll come to these realizations on their own. Fingers crossed for Gen 8, eh? See you guys later.